A very good evening to all of you. Welcome. This is Dr. Ruhi, and I'm excited to have you all here today in our exclusive series. It's the IFM Spotlight series, where we bring an IFM member on the spotlight. And I'm excited to have Anindita here with me today. Welcome, Anindita.
Thank you.
We look forward to interacting with you today. So, Anindita is India's first certified functional medicine health coach, and the work she's doing is amazing, and we'll get to know more about what she does and how she's really bringing an impact in her clients. So Anindita works exclusively with women, and her focus area is autoimmune conditions. So before we get to know more about how, why, and more of everything, so Anindita, I would want to get started with what really brought you to this field of functional medicine. You have been in the financial services. So what brought you to this space of wellness?
So my journey into functional medicine started in 2013 when my daughter fell seriously ill with a drug side effect given to control her severe eczema. So she was on immunosuppressive medications, oral steroids for a while before that. And that was the turning point when she was hospitalized with a life-threatening infection, and she was in the ICU in the hospital for a month. She survived that crisis. And when she came back home, I vowed to find a more gentler and much more effective solution than what conventional medicine had to offer. So it was in fact, the whole of 2014, I did research. I was just trying to find out what could work. Ayurveda, this, that. I didn't know where to start. So it took me a year almost to figure out that food is medicine, that there is something to it. And there is something called functional medicine. I literally stumbled across it. And when I realized that, this is how it works and it's a root cause approach. And I was finally convinced after a year of research that it was worth a shot. And we started her on functional medicine treatment in 2015, and we got her off all medications in 2017. And we've had ups and downs after that, but never to what we were at that time, because now I primarily manage with with her diet, with lifestyle, with reducing toxins, with with environment, with supplements. So all of that has worked. So this is what actually brought me to functional medicine and to the field of health coaching, because I realized there were so many out there who were struggling just like me, just like a family, and whom I could help.
So that was a long time back, like 2014-15. So it's almost like 8-9 years back. And then I don't think there were many functional medicine practitioners in India. So you would have had to look outside India to really look for help in this space.
Yes, I did. I actually worked with somebody in the UK.
Okay.
And I also just found him. I did my own research on that, and I found him. And today, actually, he's sort of my mentor. He's one of the leading functional medicine practitioners in the UK now, in London. Yeah, so he's the one who sort of guided me. But what I realized is that a lot of the groundwork I had to figure out on my own, because he gave me the guidance, he gave me the support, he gave me the direction, but the day-to-day choices. And for 2 years, as I said, it took us 2 years because, I had to figure out everything. Myself. So the diet, and it's Indian diet, and he was in the UK. So the diet was a big, challenge for me to figure out. And for a child, you have to be even more careful because you don't want nutritional deficiencies when you take out certain foods, and, about the environment. So it was a challenge, but he helped actually.
Wonderful. And so given that it all started off with your own daughter's health, right? So basically you started off with a child's autoimmune condition. Right. But today your focus is only on women. Right. And so why? Why did you just want to focus on women and only on autoimmune conditions? Any special reason for that?
I don't think the reason is special per se, but it's something that I was drawn towards. But I think, for the first 5 years, so the first 4 years, from 2017 onwards, I have my own coaching practice. I have been working with all kinds, with all gender. So I have worked with children, I have worked with men, I've primarily worked with women. But my messaging seems to resonate more with women. That's what I realized. And I was actually working across health conditions. There was no particular chronic, condition that I was looking at. It's just last year I realized the seriousness of the rising pace of autoimmune conditions across the world, right? It's not just in US anymore, it's in our country as well. And I realized that this is a segment that is going underserved. So I have an experience because of my own personal experience of dealing with my daughter's health issue, which also has immune dysregulation at the root. It's not an autoimmune condition per se, but asthma, allergies, eczema all fall under immune dysregulation category, if you will. And so that's from personal experience. So I know, what needs to be done, etc. But autoimmunity obviously is a different ballgame because it's a very severe form of immune dysregulation. And I think I was drawn towards that, and I realized that this is an area I can really help a lot of people who are not getting the help that they need, the direction, the guidance. And honestly, the sad part is since 2013, when she was put on oral steroids and immunosuppressives, there's not much that has changed as far as conventional medicine approach is concerned. So whatever I can do, there's a lot we can do, but people just don't know. And interestingly, more women actually develop autoimmune conditions than men. We are not exactly sure why that is so. That's the other reason I thought that, it really makes sense. And I think my messaging resonates more with women in any case.
Great. And often what we see that, it's like they're struggling with the symptoms for such a long time, right? And it takes years even before any diagnosis is made, especially if you just look at Hashimoto thyroiditis, right? Nobody looks at the autoimmune autoantibodies. It's just the thyroid panel. And then it takes almost 10 years down the line, that's when they are really tested for autoantibodies and they realized that it's been Hashimoto and nothing was done about it. And even if diagnosed, there is no solution in the conventional mode of treatment. So now in most cases we also see that women or let's say anybody, right, they come to us with a recent diagnosis of an autoimmune condition, and they're completely shattered because they've been told you are diseased for life. There is no solution for it. So how do you handle such situations in your practice?
So actually what I've learned over the years of, actually practicing coaching and building my own practice, these are things that I've learned by myself. And of course, I've learned by, looking at what others are doing, is that a lot of the content that I put out. So I am actually also a content creator. All of us need to be, and we can talk about that a bit later. So the content that I put out actually helps to cover some of these things. So, to give hope to people that there is a solution, because you're right, absolutely right. So I have actually figured out there are 3 stages of awareness. I mean, there are many stages of awareness, but just to make it simple, there are actually pretty much 3 stages of awareness when my clients come to me. So the first stage is what you're talking about. They have no clue that there is a solution available or possible, which, and they've given up hope after. And you're right, it can take years and decades to get. I mean, I know of people who have taken 20 years to get a diagnosis. So that's how sad it is. And then you have a middle segment who have an idea and they are doing something, but they're not sure what, they need some direction. And then you have a third segment who's tried something and it's not worked out for them. So you actually have 3 buckets kind. So that's how I have, sort of categorized it. And my messaging sort of takes care of that a lot. Of course, in spite or, even then I have people coming to me, and through our discovery session, through the first few sessions are actually critical. And in coaching, we call it building rapport, because that's actually where you bridge that gap between you and that person. You build a rapport and you connect with that person, you understand, you empathize, and then actually you start the process of healing. So that's how we approach it. I mean, I approach it.
Right. So, in functional medicine practice, all of us, of course, are looking at the root cause, right? But how sustainably, how consistently we are able to help our clients stick to a certain, plan of action is what is the key to really bring out the outcomes, in their health. And we would love to know more about that, Anindita, from you, and especially, your body-friendly approach that you use with your clients. So, you might want to go on with a slide deck that you've put together.
Let me just share my screen. I have a few slides that I want to share with you. Just let me know if you can see my slides.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a window of opportunity that I see, and I'm going to touch upon this a bit because this is one area which is, if you can think about it, which is even more underserved in the whole category of autoimmune conditions that I've come to realize over the past 1.5 years that I've been focusing, on this particular area. And I'm going to just share a bit about what I share with my clients in my other webinars on autoimmunity, because that will give you an idea about what exactly I'm talking about, because we have an opportunity to actually make a difference. And I'm going to touch upon a few things about also how we can sustain those changes, right? How we can actually get better. So this slide is to just give you an idea of, what really goes on in autoimmune disease. But I'm not going to get into that today because this webinar is not an autoimmunity per se, but as in how it pertains to how I work in my practice, or how I build my coaching program. Because the first 2 points, right? So you have vibrant health at one end, and this is specifically for autoimmune diseases, but in some ways it will be similar to what chronic illness progression also takes place, right? But I'm talking specifically about autoimmune. So you have vibrant health at one end of the spectrum, then you have disease, degenerative disease on the other end. And suppose somebody were to start on this spectrum today, like in this year, right? You start with cellular damage, and for most people that means they may not have any symptoms at all, right? And you don't even get to know what's happening. So we call it benign autoimmunity. Then of course it doesn't follow an exact pattern of year to year, but this is just to sort of simplify things. Then maybe a year down the line, in the next 1 year or so, we reach a level where there is now tissue damage happening because the body is now producing antibodies, it's continued to produce antibodies and it's damaging the tissue as well. This is where we actually start seeing some minor symptoms. But even here, not everybody actually gets to see any symptoms. It might be just minor irritations like headaches, skin rashes, headaches which come and go, maybe a bit of indigestion, maybe gas, maybe a bit of bloating. Very, very, very minor irritations that we typically medicate or take a pill for or completely ignore, right? And then, of course, the damage starts to build up. So then you have organ inflammation, then you have organ damage as a whole. And finally, at that stage, when you have had enough damage where you actually have identifiable symptoms and beyond, is actually where you get a disease diagnosis. This is why, Dr. Ruhi mentioned that autoimmune disease diagnosis can take years, if not decades, to get one proper diagnosis. And if somebody's on the spectrum, they actually go on to have multiple autoimmune diseases because of this reason. So the window of opportunity is right at the beginning. So while I work with women with autoimmune conditions who have already been diagnosed, there are many more who know, or whose doctors have sort of come to the conclusion that they may have some kind of autoimmunity going on, but they are not exactly sure which one. They don't have a confirmed diagnosis. Sometimes the tests come back positive. Sometimes the tests change. This is what keeps on happening. So I am now also focusing on that part, because here is where I can actually have the maximum impact, because actually you can start reversing the disease progression. So this is why I wanted to share this particular slide, because I think it's a huge opportunity for us where the disease progression does not take place. And obviously the damage is minimal at this point. And the way I do it in my practice, which is what I want to share with you today, is that I combine the what and the why. Now, functional medicine is all about a root cause approach. It goes beyond symptom management. It is about approaching the person as a whole, treating the person as a whole. As a health coach, I obviously do not get into any kind of treatments or medications, but there's so many other things that needs to be done. Figuring out what are the interconnectedness between the health issue, the symptom, the environment of the person. So which is the what and the why? What's really going on? Why is this actually disease progressing? What can be done about it? What we sometimes miss out is the how, because this how is the gap, right? Because you can give the client as much information as you want, as many handouts as you want, but if you're not there to guide them, if we are not there to hold their hands and show them how to make those changes, how to sustain those changes, what happens? They will get well, but they won't stay well. So this is what is key to heal from a chronic illness, because obviously there's no cure for a chronic disease, right? So combining this with the how is where the health coaching elements come in. And I'm really lucky. I feel lucky that I got into health coaching at a time when it was just starting off. And then I actually figured out that I also wanted to delve deeper into functional medicine per se as well, because I really wanted to get into the depths of what is really going on and why is it happening. So I actually completed my training in functional medicine as well. And now I'm able to combine all these aspects in my own coaching program. But again, we don't need to have all of them. In one person, we can have a collaborative healthcare team to do that for us, right? So it doesn't have to be one person. Each of us have our own way of working. And this, again, we are pretty much familiar within functional medicine that symptoms are a gift. They are our body's way of sending us messages. And again, in the case of autoimmune conditions, particularly, but that's true for any chronic illness, your immune system is sending you a message, and that's in the form of symptoms. So if we start paying attention, if we start listening to these messages, especially at the beginning of disease progression, we can save ourselves a lot of pain, a lot of time, a lot of suffering by and large, right? So this is the approach that I take. I mean, this is the mindset that I teach my clients to take when they come to me, that, you need to take your symptoms as a gift. But I know that for some people, the disease is so deeply entrenched that they might have. I actually had a client who had 200 symptoms. When she did the medical symptoms questionnaire, there were 200 of them. That score was 200. I mean, that's actually the highest ever. So obviously, my role is to then simplify it, because we cannot tackle all of these. Even though we are using a root cause approach, we cannot, obviously manage all of the issues at the same time, remove all of the triggers. So then the approach is to also prioritize, right? Figure out what are the connections, what are the low-hanging fruits, what are the priority areas. So that's, even then, symptoms actually have a big role to play, because your daily choices matter, right? In chronic illnesses, what we are putting in our mouths, which is a hydration, nutrient-dense, unrefined, unprocessed foods. Eating hygiene matters. How we eat matters. Avoiding toxins in our environment, regular bowel movements, which means that not being constipated, practicing deep relaxation, regular movement and exercise. All of these things, I've just put down 10 points, but there's so many of them, maybe subcategories. And these things are really hard to sustain, to do, especially if you have lived a certain way of life, right? I mean, in the case of autoimmune diseases, for example, I ask my clients to go off gluten, to go off dairy, and it's hard for them. So, so then how do you do that? And this is true for all chronic illnesses. We typically start with the root cause, with food as medicine. But what happens is that when we are able to approach this from a place of the coach approach and not just an expert approach. So we actually, in health coaching, we call it the coach approach versus the expert approach. And I actually utilize both in my coaching practice. So I typically will have 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes of the expert approach or the functional medicine part of it. And the last remaining part, I'll actually do the coaching part. Both are really important, or it can change depending on where the client is. But finally, we have to help our clients discover their own power to change. That's when change is sustainable. Not because I told you so, or I asked you to get off gluten, or I think you should get off gluten because it's very inflammatory. That doesn't really work, right? They'll be off that food for maybe a month, 2 months, maybe while they're paying me, and then after that they'll go right back to it, right? It's not sustainable. So what we use in coaching is the principles of positive psychology, because research shows us that when we also look at what's going right in your life, right? Because anyone who comes to you or who comes to me obviously has a whole set of issues. They don't have, they're not coming to me because they're happy or they're settled and they are in pain, they are suffering, they are exhausted. So, we are only focused on that. But what we know, what research shows us, that if we focus also on what's really right in your life, that's when you're actually motivated to keep going, to keep making changes, to keep showing up for yourself. This is what, in a nutshell, positive psychology is about. There are many tools under this that we use, like motivational interviewing, character strengths. We are trained in that as functional medicine health coaches, but it's a remarkably effective tool, which helps our clients to actually figure out. So for example, one of the questions that I ask my clients at the beginning of every session is, what are you celebrating this week? right? Because the first thing we start off with, these are the problems, this is what happened, this is what went wrong. I start with what went right this week. And, it helps to shift their mindset, it helps to shift their perspective. And that gives you all the energy that you need and the motivation and the resilience. Partnering, and the difference is that we also need to partner with our clients rather than, like, as I said, this is the expert versus the coach approach. So only telling them what to do is not really, effective. Partnering in clients with clients to create, because this is a healing journey. It's like a marathon and not a sprint. Unlike in conventional medicine, in acute conditions, there's a surgery or there is an infection, then you need to take a pill and it goes away. This doesn't happen. So co-creating their healing journeys, is what is required. The third thing that I find, as Dr. Ruhi was saying, when clients come to us, they're so battled. I mean, they're so, they're sort of given up hope in many cases. They feel hopeless, they feel overwhelmed, they feel confused. They really don't believe that the food that they will change or eat will have any impact. And I start teaching them how to rewrite their story. You are not your disease, right? Your disease need not be your identity. I mean, that's actually one of the major things that I sort of worked on with my own daughter, because eczema literally took over her entire life, and she was very young at that time. And now it's obviously, as I mentioned, that it's very much under control. But that was my sort of approach with her, that your eczema does not define you. You're much beyond that. You're a whole person. Eczema is just a part of who you are. So you are not your disease is something that I think we need to tell our clients. They need to imbibe that. And of course, fostering accountability and self-management, because that's what will help them stay on track. That's what will help them, become unstuck. Otherwise, we call it the revolving door of disease. You get better for a while, and then once you stop working with a practitioner, then again you come back to square one, and then again maybe you try some new diet, and again you get better, and again you come back. So you get into this revolving door, and you can get into this revolving door for many different reasons. But one can be because you are not held accountable to anyone, and you are not actually taught how to manage yourself. And this is a big aspect of, especially where autoimmune diseases are concerned. So that's the reason I wanted to talk about this, is that we are often taught to be at war with our bodies. And actually, this is not just true for autoimmune conditions, but even diseases like cancer and some other chronic illnesses, where we are led to believe that we had to kill ourselves, where we had to decimate, where we have to attack. The words that we use have a huge impact over the perspective, over our approach towards our own bodies. And we forget that we're talking about our own body. It's the only home that we will ever have to live. So if we have an approach where we are attacking our own bodies, where we are killing cells, where we are, that kind of language, it's very detrimental, right, to the whole healing process. So this being at war with our bodies is not really helping us. So my clients shift from that to a body-friendly approach, which is what I'm going to be focusing on. But this is a huge area of concern for me, and a huge area of focus, that we don't need to be at war with our bodies. That's not really helping us in any manner whatsoever. So that's the reason I put together, and this has happened over a period of 4-5 years that I have been coaching people. It's obviously not happened overnight, but I realized that being at war was not really beneficial at all. And what I have realized, that a body-friendly approach is what we all need to inculcate. And I specifically focus on this in my coaching program. And as I will just touch upon the 3-part framework that I take my clients through, we get a better idea. And the first thing that I teach my clients, the first thing that I sort of change their mindset around, is that your body is your friend, right? Your body is so there are many activities that I make them do, but your body is trying to protect you. Even your immune system actually is trying to keep you safe, and autoimmunity is actually a kind of maladaptation to your environment, to a modern lifestyle. So it just changes the whole perspective of the person, right? And it helps them to see, it helps them to increase awareness about their own body. It helps them to actually tune into the underlying messages, and ultimately supporting our own body's healing process is what finally enables us to use a root cause approach to address underlying imbalances, address nutritional and other deficiencies, and more importantly, makes it sustainable. So I've had clients who worked with me a couple of years ago, and many of the things that we have discussed, but I do periodically get in touch with them. I like to get some feedback. If I'm launching a new program, I get in touch with them. And they all tell me that many of the things, sort of it's become a part of their lifestyle. This is the beauty. So even when they are not working with me, even then there's nobody breathing down their neck and telling them to be off certain foods and live a certain way. They're doing it on their own because now they know what their body needs from them, right? That's why a body-friendly approach and treating your body as a friend is so remarkable. So this is the 3-part framework that I have actually put together over my years of working with people, with my clients. And the 3 main things that I talk, part of this is the simplify, reconnect, and sustain. Right. So I start with simplifying the whole health creation process because it can become really confusing for people, like really overwhelming, confusing. Which diet should I follow? Is gluten good for me, bad for me? How long should I be off? Is keto better than paleo? We make it so complicated, right? And each person has to be, it has to be customized for a person also. A lot of the things obviously are foundational. A lot of the things can be common, but some things have to be customized. And more importantly, the overwhelm has to be taken away. So the first part that I focus on is simplification. And the next part is reconnecting with their bodies. And the third part is sustaining. So the interconnectedness is what has a big role to play in the initial stages of my program, where we find out the connections between what's going on. Because when they understand what's going on, they are actually more willing to do what is required, right? Change is hard. They're willing to be more committed. Then we remove the triggers and, of course, laying the foundations. And one of the key things that I do is put an eating hygiene in place. Most of us focus only on what foods we should be eating. We don't focus on how we should be eating those foods. So that's where laying the foundations come in. It's really important. Sleeping hygiene, eating hygiene, bedtime routine, all of that. Then, of course, we go beyond that, which is body acceptance, which is a sort of intersection of reconnect and sustain, where we move beyond symptom management. We figure out, what our body needs from us, what kind of nourishment it needs from us, and of course, make our body our friend, which is what I talked about. And the last but not the least is the self-care part of it, especially for women. I find that prioritizing our own health is at the bottom of our list, usually because we have so many responsibilities. This is true for some men as well, but it's really, for an overwhelming majority of women, this is the case. So sustaining that health is very important, and having a consistent self-care practice is really critical. So increasing self-awareness becomes a part of it. Your emotions actually become a big part of it, because if you're not connected to your body, to your emotions, you don't know how you're feeling, right? And which direction you should proceed. And then prioritizing and continue to prioritize what matters. So this is the framework that I follow in my coaching program, and to help my clients sort of not only get well but also to stay well. Ruhi, you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Anindita. Wonderful. I would love to, you spoke so much about the coaching aspect, right? Which really makes a difference in, kind of helping the clients stick to a certain plan of action given to them. So would you give some examples of, of your health coaching? Let's say if you just have to talk about making them stick to a gluten-free diet, for example, right? So if you want to give some examples there of the health coaching aspect, so that, the other practitioners, especially, let's say, the doctors in the audience here, right, where largely most of the time the focus is only on the treatment aspect. So it would be great to, get those insights from you.
So let's take the example of a gluten-free diet. I mean, that will make it more practical. So, one is, of course, the handout, but as I mentioned, the handouts, rarely work for a very long period of time. So the way that, there's not one thing that we do, but I'll give you an example. One of the things that we are taught in Functional Medicine Coaching Academy, and I can talk about obviously only my academy, is character strengths. Okay. We all have 24 character strengths, all of us, anywhere in the world. And it's when we can tap in. So we use them intuitively, right? I mean, we know that I might be a curious person. I love learning new things. So, my bravery might be, I'm really, sort of open to learning new things. Honesty might be, I know I speak the truth at most times. So all of that can be there. So we have an idea. But when you can use your strengths with intention, with purpose, it makes a huge amount of difference, especially when you are dealing with a challenge, like a health challenge or any other challenge. So what I do, for example, so I'm just giving a concrete example. I make my clients go through a VIA character survey. So they have a list of strengths. So number one is your topmost strength, number two, three, four. So it's a decreasing order. It's not that you don't use the number 23rd or 24th strength. It's just that the first 7, 8 strengths are your core signature strengths. You use them more in most situations. But if you know about your other strengths, you can also use them with intention, right? So coming back to a gluten-free diet, one way of doing this, as I said, there is no one way, but one way of doing this would be to tap into the strength. So I would ask my client that pick out 2 to 3 strengths that you think will help you with sticking to a gluten-free diet. So I'll give you an example. I actually did it with my daughter. So I'll take my daughter's example. I can take many clients. So she picked up gratitude, she picked up forgiveness, and I think she picked up love for herself. What does that mean? It means that, and of course, I don't give the answers to my clients, right? They are the ones who come up with their own answers. That's the beauty of coaching. You're not providing the answers. So my own daughter, she said that, the way I will show love for my body is to stay off gluten. So that's how she would apply love. Gratitude would be that she would show her gratitude, or she's grateful for even the other foods that she's able to consume, even if she can't have gluten, right? So there are many ways that you can express gratitude. And the third would be forgiveness. Suppose you make a mistake, like you by chance have it, or you feel like having, and you have a little bit, you can forgive yourself for that. This is how you build resiliency. This is how you deal with challenge, and this is how you sustain these difficult changes that you need to make and show the commitment. So this is one example. I mean, there are so many other ways.
Yeah, this is wonderful. I think that's something that we really need to incorporate in our practice, right? So instead of making the client feel guilty about, okay, why did you eat gluten, right? I mean, it has to turn around. It has to be a different way of handling things. And I think what you've explained it's wonderful. So you talked about self-care a lot, right? So how are you doing that? I'm just wondering, how much time are you spending with your clients, where you can focus on the self-care, where you can focus on the treatment aspect, the coaching, all these things together?
It's come from trial and error. I have not come across this magic formula, but what I've realized, and it has changed and it has evolved and it will keep changing, I'm sure. But you are right. To answer the first part, self-care has to be a big part, and especially where women are concerned, but even men, but especially where women are concerned, because we simply don't prioritize our health, because we have so many things on our to-do list. I mean, as I call them, I tell them jokingly that even your dog Tommy might be, above you in the to-do list, right? That actually happens. So self-care forms a big part of my program. And as I mentioned, that there are various ways to inculcate, and it starts with small steps. It's not a huge thing that we take one fine day and decide. So I start focusing on, so in fact, there is if some of you who's from the FMCA or IAFM background will know this, there's a self-care questionnaire that comes. So that's one very easy way of figuring out which are the specific areas of self-care that you need support with. Is it your social aspects of self-care? Is it your work? Is it your personal? I'm forgetting all of them. There are like 5, 6 of them. So once you know which is the area, and of course, it is not my job to tell you which area you should focus on, for example, right? In this particular case. So it's the client who comes and tells me, I think I'll start with sleep, right? Sleep is a big part of me. And I know that sleep. So it's a kind of a dance. So I do provide guidance because I know that gut health is important. So it's not that I will talk about gut health right at the 12th session or something. I will start straight away with food. But there are other things that I know that clients need. So I focus on that. But like self-care, sleep is maybe, the client is really struggling with. So we start with sleep. So we start with something as mundane as setting a bedtime routine. That's how I would start. So how do you set a bedtime routine? So I don't do everything on that 1 hour session because it's not possible. So I have resources, I share resources, I share podcasts. So there are many, many different ways of doing it. So self-care, yes. So there's no one way. There are handouts. So as I mentioned that in my sessions, I break it up. So it depends, but the first half an hour or so to 45 minutes might be functional medicine if we are discussing anything in depth, a particular topic, maybe healing gut repair, healing the gut lining or something. And then maybe the last 15-20 minutes, I'll actually ask them, make them do certain exercises like that. Your body is your friend is actually an exercise that I make them do. So it's a beautiful exercise. Actually.
Yeah, and it's very important because often, people start feeling that, okay, my body has just become a house of disease, right? Yeah. And it's just difficult to live with it anymore.
Yeah.
So we really need to turn this around and start making them accept their body, embrace it, and start working on it.
You're right. You're actually right. It starts with accepting the body as it is today. And there are various ways, that you can do that. There is, again, no one way. So there is an exercise called Today's Body. So I teach, and it's, again, not that every client has to do this, but I teach some of my clients that, can we just talk about today, how you're feeling? How are you feeling in your body? It's about today's body. Tomorrow, your body might be different. And actually, this is true in autoimmune conditions. Symptoms keep changing every day. Things keep moving, shifting. So Today's Body is a beautiful exercise that, they can do.
Awesome. And okay, let's see if we have any questions here. So Amit is asking, do you support chemotherapy for cancer patients?
Not yet. No. I'm sort of focusing on this as of now. Maybe in the future, but not right now.
Okay. So Anindita, what is, so now we see more and more people are coming into the functional medicine stream, right? More and more practitioners are getting trained on functional medicine and building up their practice, and most of this is going online today, right? So what do you think, has really helped you, come to where you are today? I'm sure it has taken you a couple of years to be, where you are today. And what is that you think you've been doing which has really helped you, create more awareness about you, for your audience, for your target audience? So what is your piece of advice for the other practitioners?
So it has taken me 5 years to reach where I am today. That is when I started. Every step of the way, it has been a learning experience. It's been a learning curve for me. I jokingly tell people that before COVID, I was 90% online because I didn't realize that most of my clients were outside Bombay. It's not that I had designed it to be like that, but I hardly had any clients in Bombay. So it was always Zoom. And after COVID, it became 100% online. So nothing really changed for me that way. But, joke aside, I think what has helped me is creating content. We are finally, if we have to be in the online space, and I think anybody who's coming into the functional medicine space will have to be in the online space because that's how functional medicine works. That's how you can scale. And that's the need of the art, if we just, be very clear, even if it was not earlier, pre-COVID. So having said that, we need to also become content creators. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't mean that we need to just, start putting out social media posts and create random content, but we need to have a strategy in place, right? And we all have our own strengths. So it, again, is not a one formula for everyone. So, for example, if I take my case, I realized, because I've tried out different things, right? So one is that you need to allow yourself to try out different mediums if you have not done so already. If you're very confident, then that's fine. I was not, so I was trying out. And I like to try out different things because everything doesn't work. You find out what didn't work. You do more of what did work. That's how you actually progress. And for me, writing comes naturally to me more than talking, more than video. So writing is something. So content creation for me starts with a blog, for example. For someone else, it can start with a video. For a third person, it can start with audio. There's so many mediums out there online. You have to just pick and choose and be consistent. I think if I had to choose one word that, you need to, one thing that you need to do in order to actually be seen and, differentiate yourself, it's consistency. What happens is that we start something and then we don't see the results because nothing happens overnight. I am still building up my practice and I am talking about autoimmunity for the last 6 months and now I'm seeing some traction. But consistency is the key. There is no other way. Right. So
I've seen that in your post, Anindita. Like I see you regularly coming online, on Instagram Live or Facebook Live. Your blogs are there, posted regularly on your social media, on your website. There is regular podcast, notifications And so I really see that consistency, and I'm sure that is one thing, that's very important when we really want to deliver something to the audience out there.
Yes, so that's, and having your own message, that will not happen overnight, especially if you're just starting out. I mean, I didn't have any message which was separate or different from other people. I was, it takes time to figure out your own voice. And by voice, I don't mean literally, because what I'm talking about in my, say, blog or podcast or video doesn't matter. I mean, you just choose one, and choose the one that is the simplest and the easiest for you. I mean, don't choose the most difficult one. And eventually figuring out what is something that you stand for and what is something that you stand against. And that's not going to come overnight. It's taken me a long time to figure out that for example, as I mentioned in my presentation today, I stand against being at war with our bodies, calling names, saying that we are killing off, we are destroying, it is not serving us, doing all of that, whether it's cancer, whether it's autoimmune condition. I mean, I can't change the whole world, but at least my corner of the world, I can sort of create the awareness. And I stand for a body-friendly approach. I think if we start paying attention to what our bodies are trying to tell us every single day, we can make a huge amount of progress. So that's, I think, the other thing. So how do you differentiate yourself and figure out and start with something that comes easy to you?
Right. And how do you think, and well, personally, I feel, having this conversation with you now, that, coaching is such an important aspect of whatever we are trying to provide to our clients, whatever difference we are trying to make. If we include an aspect of coaching, it will really help us achieve a lot more impact, So how do you think, the other practitioners who are, let's say, not trained in coaching, right? Or now all of a sudden they cannot do a course in coaching, and include this aspect in their practice. So how is that, that's possible?
So if you can do a course in coaching, there are people actually. So now, in fact, there are a lot of practitioners who are medical professionals getting into coaching because they realize that this is the big gap. And they want to also learn about it. I mean, they might have a coach in their practice, but they also want to know what's really going on. And it's going to help them as well. Because you start actually by coaching yourself. I mean, the character strength that I talked about, I had to first understand my own strengths and how to use them in my own life before I can teach anybody else. It's like you can read a book about swimming, but you have to actually know swimming to teach anybody how to swim. It's not just theory. You can't stand by the pool and just explain to somebody. You have to actually get wet. So one is that, but obviously not everybody can do that. So the other way to actually is partner with a health coach now. In fact, I'm so happy to see, I think as we mentioned, in 2017, I was the only functional medicine health coach in India. And I was also completely lost. And I was hoping to work with someone, which didn't happen. I was happy to partner with a functional medicine practitioner. Unfortunately, that didn't really work out. And I sort of forged my own way ahead. But it's, you can actually partner with a health coach, and this partnering, this collaboration can be of various formats. Like I am personally, I'm happy with the way my practice has shaped up, and eventually I might want to have a team, etc. Not right now because I'm still putting things in place. But for me, for example, if I talk about myself, I'm happy to do a one-off session, on a one particular deep dive about the coaching part of it. And in fact, I did that with Dr. Anish Musa for his clients. So that can be a kind of a collaboration, but also you can have a coach in your practice because there are now several functional medicine health coaches and other health coaches who are certified in our country, from other institutes as well. So you can actually have a coach, and you need to have a coach. Actually, it's not a nice to have; it is a need. It's important, necessary. It's a need to have. You need to have just like you need a dietitian or a nutritionist. We all agree, to put a meal plan. I think this is where we need to change our way of thinking, that you need to have a health coach. Otherwise, how do your patients get better and stay well? It's not about sort of improving and then, as I mentioned, that they get stuck otherwise. So the collaboration can be in different formats, and that's the beauty of the functional medicine world. It's up to us to create different kinds of practices, that will work for each of us.
True. Yeah. So we have few questions. So what about children with autoimmunity? How do we tell them in this world full of junk?
Nirmala. So yes. I'll give you my example. my family's example rather. So my daughter had to go off gluten. I mean, I realized that was actually, big trigger for her. Didn't realize it overnight, but through my research, etc. And the way that for children, right? For adults, it's different. But the way that, and I've had my first client was a 14-year-old girl. So I've dealt with teenagers as well, and the way to go about it is to first understand the importance of this ourselves as parents, right? Accept that these things are not good for any child. Forget about whether they have autoimmunity or ADHD, doesn't really matter. Those, and I'll give you a classic example. I've taken clients for grocery tour earlier. I mean, this is all pre-COVID days in food hall in Bombay. And I have taken to the breakfast aisle, okay, where all the breakfast cereals are there. And I've shown them a packet of the children's breakfast cereal. And I have made them read the ingredients list. And I've actually highlighted to them the kind of toxins that are there. Okay, forget about other junk. I'm just talking about a breakfast cereal, which is supposed to be healthy for our children. And whether it's autoimmunity, ADHD, or any other condition, it starts with us. So we stop getting these foods in our house. So we do it as a family, right? That's how I approached it. It was not my daughter had to go through that, right? Or my daughter had to change the diet. It was that my entire family, because it's good for the entire family, right? So
that's what I guess the parents, or then the parents also need to understand when they really want their child to get better. Like, we work with learning disorders, or
yes,
so many children, like it's not about giving the child gluten-free diet, or taking the child off dairy. It's, if you really want to have the child stick to that, it's the entire family. It shouldn't just come in your house.
Yes, absolutely. So that's where you start. That's not where you end, of course, but that's where you start. And of course, then as they grow older, you teach them about making healthier choices. And my son now knows that if he has to choose, a Coke is like once a year because he's gone to a birthday party. But if he has to choose a beverage, then he will himself say a Gatorade. He knows, because I made him read. I've taught them how to read ingredients. So he himself will say, no, I won't be having it. He'll tell his friends, but I'll have a fruit juice instead. I said, have a juice. I'm not stopping you from having a beverage, but you need to make a healthier option. And it's that awareness. Actually, it's the awareness, because you can't be policing them around 24/7. So it's the awareness that you are building, but you have to first become aware yourself.
And one needs to look at the bright side of it. For example, we in a hormone reset program where it's specifically for women, right? And it's like, I just came in for myself, but I see my entire family getting better. So that's the brighter side of looking at things, when you really start making a difference in your own life, for yourself, but it's impacting the entire family.
Yeah. So we all have made a change. I mean, our entire family's lifestyle has changed for the better, right?
Yes.
And the other thing I would say is that whether it's a child or an adult, doesn't matter. This is what I tell my clients also, that you need to change the way you're thinking about it. You are thinking that you're depriving your child, you're depriving yourself. No, you're not. You're giving your body exactly what it needs. So you turn that around. Stop thinking that you're depriving. Start thinking that you're actually giving your child what your child needs to thrive. It's not about a lack of disease, right, that we're talking about. It's about thriving. It's about vibrant health. It's not about just that there's no disease, around the corner. That's not what we want to aim for.
Yes, and it's your child who's having. If you're giving your child what you should actually be giving, your child is having the most nutrient dense food than any other child around him.
And long-term good side effects of that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we'll take one last question from Raghavendra again, and it's, what food do you prefer for ADHD? Few anti-inflammatory food.
If you want to, so I think any chronic illness, it starts with nutrient dense, unprocessed whole foods. Okay, it's not about a particular diet. It doesn't matter with the chronic illness you have. So I think specifically ADHD, again, gluten I know is an issue, but I think Ruhi can take that. And as far as anti-inflammatory foods are concerned, all vegetables and fruits, by and large, I'm not pinpointing particular ones where you might be intolerant towards or have some issue. But in general, the whole plethora of fruits and vegetables, everything that came from a plant but not made in a plant, is anti-inflammatory. Like, I would start there. The second layer I typically tell my clients, just to make life easy for them, is to think of colors. So it's a rainbow diet. Rather than trying to figure out which vegetable I should be having, which particular day, today I had this, tomorrow I should have that. That's obviously one way of meal planning. But what you can start with, especially when you're getting started, is just focus on the colors. So make sure that you're having those 6-7 colors cycling throughout the week. So for example, in my own house, I make sure in the winter especially that we are having all colored soups. So one day it's red, next day it's green, third day it's orange. Automatically, you will get all the nutrients, all the anti-inflammatory foods.
Yeah. And to add to that, of course, gluten, dairy, sugar, this is what, are inflammatory food when it comes to ADHD or any other chronic condition. So these have to be out. You'll also have to look for, the GMO foods. So whether it's soy or, barley, barley again has gluten, so it has to be out. Maize, corn.
Eggs.
So, if you're giving eggs, it has to be the desi eggs. So look for, you'll have to identify the GMOs and exclude them. Also, you'll have to look for food which are very common allergens, like the peanuts or the seafood. Walnuts can be in some cases. So you'll need to watch for how the child is reacting to these food and remove that from the diet. So great. It was wonderful, Anindita. Thank you for being with us. And wonderful to know how you are approaching, your practice, how you are making a difference in people's life. And I definitely have a couple of takeaways which I would want to implement in my practice. And I'm sure the others who've been a part of this session, who would be listening to this session later, will definitely have a couple of takeaways. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor to come for the first Spotlight series. It's amazing to be a part of the IFM family in any case. It's so nice to finally have a community where we all speak the same language. It was quite lonesome at the beginning. So I am really thrilled to be here today. And may we all go from strength to strength as a community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, and stay tuned, all of you. We'll have another exciting session next month. So it's the fourth Wednesday of every month that we have the Spotlight series. So we'll see you next then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anindita. Yeah. Bye.